Well, good morning, everybody. Whether it's morning or afternoon, hope you're having a great day. My name is Tony, and the channel is Tony Talks Cards. And today it's going to be a VR for our hobby president, Mr. John Mangini. I hope this will not be too long, but thank you for sticking with me on this. He posed a really great question about a week ago. I think it was more or less, how do you collect? What are you proud of? Why do you collect the cards you collect? And honestly, it seems like a simple question, but I kind of in my head was thinking about it for a long time. Like, I know what I collect, I can see what I collect, but how do I collect? And why do I collect it? So I actually all on the table here. I wrote something out because I didn't want to kind of fumble with my words. And I thought it'd be a good exercise to me put down my thoughts in paper on writing and kind of crystallize, why I collect what I do. And so thanks for the VR, Mr. Mangini. Appreciate that. Hopefully you can watch this and you like the video and it's not too long here. So what am I proud of? What am I excited about? What pivots have I made in my collection and why? And so really good exercise. And I kind of crystallized down to kind of one sentence. At least I thought about it. I collect cards and collectibles of players and items that remind me of a past that I experienced, a past I lived through in the 80s, 90s specifically, but also I think a past I wish I could have experienced. And so, what do I mean by that? My card buying experience, like a lot of you guys, is probably revolved around going to local card shops, maybe card shows, swap meets, and buying packs, buying boxes of packs. If you could afford the whole box, or you just bought a pack at a time, buying packs and creating and opening up those packs to maybe fill sets, find your favorite player. And I was a set builder. And so I remember buying packs at local card shops, Sam's Club, Price Club in the 80s and 90s. I wasn't searching for hits or players. I wanted to find players to complete my sets. Whether it was a common player that I needed that one last card for, or it was happened to be a star player that I was excited to get in that one random pack, it was all about building the sets. And hopefully, I would eventually find all those cards to complete the sets, keep them in binders on the shelf and pages. And today, I've got many 80s and 90s tops, Bowman, Score, Pro Set, unopened packs in my collection. I've got boxes that are sealed, and I've got packs that are graded. Rack packs, cello packs, wax packs. From those same years I ripped in grade school and high school. And for me, keeping those unopened and secured or graded or raw, in some cases, reminds me of that local card shop walking in there in 1987 or 88, seeing the cards, the packs, on display on the counter, under the case, on a shelf behind the counter, 50 cents, 45 cents, whatever I was going for at the time. And having those packs unopened in my collection today kind of helps me kind of recreate like the card show, or not card show, but card show, I guess, too, a local card shop and or card show experience of walking in and seeing all the mystery, all the cool wrappers, the artwork, the design, the smell of the cardboard, the gum, being able to go in and buy for a couple bucks, right? Three or four or five packs of cards, opening them up, maybe getting a lot of commons or duplicates you already had, but the joy and mystery of opening up packs. And so I collect packs. How do we collect was the question, right? I collect packs because it takes me back to that childhood experience of going into a local card shop. And I loved being in that card shop. I would want to go every weekend. If we were on vacation, I would look up in the yellow pages. People, I think, know what those are still. Yellow pages, I think it was not, because white was the individual addresses and yellow pages were business. So yellow pages and seeing baseball cards, card shop, going right to the B, the C, and trying to see what was there. Where were they at? We were on vacation, but could we, for 1 hour, go and find this one card shop 10 miles away and buy some packs or buy some cards? So for me, that's what it's all about. And the joy of spending my chore money, allowance money, birthday card money, things like that on open packs. And so for that, I'll show a couple off here real quick from my core collecting years. 89 tops, I guess out of order here. 88 tops football, love the design on that. 90 tops football, and then who didn't buy? I hope most of you probably bought. If you're a football pro set, Series 1, Series 2, and then 1990 score, Series 1, Series 2 football. I bought a ton of baseball as well. Just didn't have the baseball to pull down for the video right now, but yeah, bought tons of tops and Bowman and score and upper deck some, but I was like, it was too expensive for me back in the day. But yeah, lots of cards like that, collector's choice, things like that. So um, But I also collect opened vintage baseball and football. Believe it or not, the cards are already opened and they're raw. So when I was opening packs at my local card shop, and like I said, I was opening them to complete sets. But I would look at the checklists and I'd look to know what did I need to complete that set. And when the Beckett's came out, Beckett price guides, I could see not just what I needed to complete the set, but also I could see what prices were attached to cards. And I could see there were cards back to the 50s and 40s and 30s in baseball and football back to the 40s and 30s, where I didn't even know these existed. These predated me and my parents in some cases. Like maybe my grandparents would have bought cards from this era. But here they were in a Beckett price guide, and I was just so intrigued by cards being that old and being in existence, frankly. And I've always had an interest in things that were older, historical, and things that happened before I did. And collecting little pieces of cardboard my parents or grandparents may have seen, or even though I never saw them play, it appealed to me. To hold something in my hand, one little piece of cardboard, whether it's a star player or a common quote unquote player that was old and still existed and still made it through, didn't get dumped in the trash or torn up or thrown out. It was still existing today in my hand. That was really cool. Whether it's a buck or it's worth more than that, that just appealed to me in my DNA for some reason. Even as a kid in grade school, in third, second grade, I would seek out 1992 score baseball packs, but also if they had a 1950s or 60s or 70s football card in their display case for a couple bucks, and I didn't have it yet, it was a Hall of Fame player, someone I knew about from watching NFL films and things like that. I'd see it and buy it. Like I liked that stuff. It connected me back to the past of people I never saw. And seeing NFL films, videos, or highlight reels, or having football history books I would get for Christmas or my birthday. I could read up on all those players in black and white in two-dimensional books, learn about them, see still photos of them playing, tackling, throwing the ball. All that kind of gave me that nostalgia for a thing I never experienced. I never was around in the 50s, but I had this weird nostalgia for something I never ever experienced, but maybe would have wanted to experience. And so the Beckett's, the price guides, the football cards, books, those all kind of opened me up to that knowledge I didn't have but wanted to get more of. And so, how do I collect football and baseball cards today? Well, I collect vintage cards that remind me of my set building, like I talked about in the late 80s and early 90s. I'm actually building a second set of vintage football sets from my childhood. So, I built sets from 1978 through present, and present for me was like late 80s. I'm actually going through as of earlier last year, buying partial lots, partial sets of cards from the 80s Topps football sets in X mint to near mint condition. What I would have liked as a kid back then too, and still like today, and recreating, putting those sets together. And building those sets card by card off Facebook, eBay, card shops, and trying to build a second version of that set kind of almost 40 years later and recreate some of that joy I had back in the 80s, building sets in a kind of an analog world of Beckett's and the actual card checklist itself being used as the way you knew what you were missing. And so, kind of trying to reprogram myself to be a little more analog with this part of my collecting. But how do I collect? I collect things that take me back to where I was. And like I said, with vintage baseball and football, I never was in those years, but I'm still collecting things because I love to learn about the history of it. And so today, right, I'm also buying vintage baseball cards. And I would know about the biggest, most well-known Hall of Famers like Mickey Mantle, Joe DiMaggio, Ted Williams, and then in my day in the 80s, right, baseball cards, people knew about the Wagner, the 52 Mantle, and things like that. Never had them because they were too expensive. But I didn't know about all the maybe just great players of the day who weren't Hall of Famers. And maybe even Hall of Famers who were Hall of Famers, but they didn't make all the top headlines of the videos, right, or of the books, but they were there. They were great in their day, but they weren't the top tier people would have kind of always known about. And so by learning about them, and I'm trying to read up on them, learn about them more and their connections to baseball through their cards, their statistics on the back of their cards. So I'm collecting 1940s through 1980s baseball Hall of Famers, people that I knew about, and some people I didn't know who they were, who they played for, how long they played, and trying to find one card from each of their kind of best seasons that shows the best season stats on the back of it. Not the rookie card. Usually didn't have the best season as a rookie, right? And maybe it wasn't their last card either because they were kind of winding down their career. But finding someone, mid-career who had a great ninth season, and buying their 10th card that would show the ninth season year on the back and the stats, that's what I'm doing right now that gets me excited. It's learning about the player, the write-up on the back, and that one or lots of years they had that were really crazy, batting average, home runs, RBI hits, stolen bases, wins, ERA, things like that. And so I like to learn, and I'm trying to learn about those guys through their cards. I want to eventually focus more on some pre-war cards too, but I'm having a fun time right now with the newer vintage cards. And of course, always trying to buy plenty of Cubs and Bears with football, but plenty of Cubs players too, since I do collect the Cubs. And if you've seen my videos in the back, I have various Cubs and Bears things behind me as well. So right now I'm going down the path of 1971 tops for a couple series and subsets I'm working on, which will come out in some videos in the future. Uh, very few Hall of Famers in what I'm going after in these sets, but they're pictures, their statistics, their years, their teams that I want to learn more about. And I want to learn more about baseball, and that's the how and why I'm collecting right now. And honestly, being a Cubs guy, Ernie Banks, I'm working on his Topps and Bowman base card run as well, and want to collect more of him in the future too. But here's a few more cards too to show off what I'm talking about. So guys from the Cubs and players I never would have known who they were or played, but these are cheap ways to learn about them as a player. And so here's some 1961 Fleer cards. Cap Anson, these a lot of them be Cubs or Cubs adjacent players. Roger Bresnahan, sorry, Mordecai Brown, Kai Kyler, Johnny Evers or Evers, Burley Grimes, Gabby Hartnett. I picked these up for probably $1 or $2 each on Facebook. I think it was Facebook. Really good, nice, excellent condition, perfect for me. Tony Lazzari, Jim Hippo Vaughn. Sorry about the glare here. Hack Wilson, Babe Herman, and Jackson Riggs Stevenson. So the back of these cards have, a little bit about where they came from, where they live now, their statistics, their highlights. So, for $1 or $2 each, I love learning about players I never would have seen play. Even my grandparents may never seen some of these guys play or not collected their cards. So it's cool to invest in learning, invest in the knowledge, and have fun doing it a couple bucks at a time. Here's some other cards too that show off what I'm into. Like I said, finding players that I would love to have seen play and just I didn't see them play, but they take me back to a time maybe I wish I could have been. So this is my 1973 Willie Mays. Sorry about the glare there. This is a 1950. So I'm gonna take this out of the sleeve too. 1957 Warren Spahn. I love the picture, love his smile. I got this for $5 or $7. It looks pretty nice, but someone in 1957 or 58 pasted this to the back of their scrapbook. But man, the front is solid. It's not going to win any awards, but man, I love the picture. I love the card. I love the story of why this was probably in a book all those years later, right? So um, I love this card too. 83 Tops, Reggie Jackson. I remember him from not baseball. You know the movie I'm talking about, probably the Naked Gun movies. Him and Queen Elizabeth. But anyway, learning about him as a player. I never saw him play, but he played just when I was getting out of or getting into baseball cards. But seeing that cool picture of him with the shades on in a batting pose there too is cool. And then again, seeing his stats on the back is really neat as well. Um, Nolan Ryan, of course, can't go wrong there. Would have loved to see him play live, but just seeing that card and him pitching, the windup, the follow through, the mid pitching shot, that's really cool there as well. And then one thing that I got probably 5, 6 months ago that goes to my Cubs, my learning, my things that predate me, and just wondering what it would have been like to see these guys play. And that being a motivation and impetus for why I collect how I collect. And sorry about the glare on this, maybe too. It's a 1935 Gaudi 4-in-1. So this may not work that well, but this has 3 Hall of Famers on it, 3 Cubs Hall of Famers. You've got Burley Grimes, Chuck Klein, Kai Kyler, and Woody English. I did a video on this probably 4 or 5 months ago, but this was a cheap REA auction pickup. But three Hall of Famers, Cubs Hall of Famers on one card is really cool. Don't care about the grade at all, but just the history of this coming out during the Depression, 1935, and showing some cool shots of the faces and some of the uniforms of those Cubs players is really cool too. So um, that's how I collect. That's why I collect. And like I said, by the way, on top of buying cards and the statistics and buying an open packs, I like learning about the players from their cards and books and reading and finding books to read about how the game was played. I don't have the books with me now. I should have brought them here on the video, but I've got a couple Cubs books I picked up off Amazon a couple weeks ago about the 1906 to 1910 Cubs dynasty and how great they were during those 3 or 4 years. I've got one coming on the 1970 Cubs team, which is going to tie into my 1971 Tops Cubs team. I guess that's a sneak preview series or run I'm going to do of those players as well. But I've got things like Glory of Their Times. I've got other books I was given 40 years ago that talked about Hall of Famers and what they were and their contributions to baseball that I've read many, many times and may go back and read again. Because I want to learn also by collecting. I don't want to just collect to collect, and I don't collect to invest. I'm not collecting to have a 401k in sports cards or an IRA in sports cards. I want to enjoy it and I want to learn something. I want to energize a part of my brain that I don't use during the day with what I do. I want to learn about these things, write about them, talk about them. I love talking to others about their cards too and why they like what they like. So it's all kind of crystallizing into the how and why I collect as well. Um, Let me go back here. Like I said, I have some notes of what I wanted to say, so sorry about me looking up and down, looking at my notes here. So how do I collect? Like I said, I guess I also collect to learn and educate myself about the players, their stories, contributions, and personalities. So like I said earlier, I think I collect cards and collectibles and players that remind me of a history, a past I experienced. I lived through this time. I collected cards during that time, but also reminds me of a past, maybe not reminds, it connects me to a past I didn't experience, or I wish I could have experienced collecting these old or vintage baseball players and cards. I experienced the fun of collecting cards and opening tons of packs and boxes and the gum and all and the boom of the sports card industry in the 80s and 90s and try to recreate some of that to make my room look like a local card shop, one pack at a time. But I also love collecting those guys from the 70s and 60s and 50s that I've only read about, only seen on videos, never saw play live because it connects me back to a time I wish I could have seen those guys play. Baseball history is U.S. history, and I think U.S. history definitely affected baseball history and its players. And I've always enjoyed finding those connections and collecting and building a collection, unopened packs or open packs, baseball cards, gloves, baseball bats. Helps me feel connected to the past that I've heard and read so much about. So we're 18 minutes in. I hope that's not too long, but Mr. President John Mangini, hopefully you get a chance to watch this. Appreciate the question. That's why I collect. That's how I collect. I love it all. If I had unlimited funds, I'd buy everything out there, but I don't. And so for me, my favorite team is Chicago based, the Bears, the Cubs, primarily baseball and football. So that's what I focused on and learning about those players, that era through their cards, through their tiny pieces of cardboard, through their statistics on the back of those cards is a joy for me. I love it. And we all collect differently, right? Some people collect player runs, Hall of Famers only, uh, pretty expensive cards or pretty non-expensive cards. I think someone on YouTube once famously said, collect what you like. It's just a hobby. Collect what you like. If it makes you happy and you're learning and you're enjoying the hobby, do it your way. Don't copy anybody else's way of doing it. And keep on showing those cards up. I love all the videos, all the guys I've subscribed to. Keep them up. Whether I collect what you collect or not, I love learning about what you do, what you collect, why you collect it, and keep sharing that excitement, that joy. Keep showing those cards off. Thanks very much, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.